Hello everyone, welcome back on the course Sefirot, Kabbalah and the Tree of Life. We're on lesson number 4, and so far we haven't had a regular schedule due to the holidays and other limitations. Hopefully from now on we'll keep it on this time and this day, but we'll see. It's not for certain, but we'll see how it goes. We'll take it from last time. We've started reading and learning from the book Kabbalah for Beginners. That if you don't have the book, you have the link either in the YouTube or the Facebook description box, so you can download the PDF. We've started from page 40 something, part 2 in the book. And we started talking about how the creation came to be, okay? So just a quick review. So what we've talked about is that Kabbalah deals with describing the basic law of creation, or revealing, you can say, the one thought that controls everything, which we call in Kabbalah the Creator. And in this process of describing how everything came to be, we're talking either about how the creation descended or began from some kind of initial state to what we call our world, how it developed in our world, and how from our world a person that started to feel some kind of question, yearning for something upper than this world, which is called the point in the heart, starts to ascend and reveal the system and reveal the laws, because in the end what we're talking about here are different layers of perception, of our perception. Not that reality itself changes, that the only thing that changes is our perception, okay? And in the end, reality, at least from the moment of creation, in which there is a creator and something that was created, that we call creation or creature, from that moment on, we're talking about a reality that is built of two forces, two segments, two initial, forces is the best word, I think, which is like 1 and 0, plus and minus. In Kabbalah we call them the will to bestow and the will to receive. And we started to touch on those. Okay, something happened here. Just a second. Oh, great. We've lost. Let me just find it again. I don't know why it closed. I guess. Okay. Okay, second try. So, also what we've started talking last time is about the 4 phases of direct light, meaning how you can say that we zoomed in here. This is about this part of how everything started, okay? And again it's gone. Great. We're gonna have problems today with this computer. Yeah, you know what? I'll just redraw it again. Maybe it won't crash. Okay, so what we've talked about is that there is an initial state, phase 0, which is also called the root. And this state, we describe it as an arrow going from up downwards, and we call it the thought of creation, or the creator, the will to bestow. Okay, and this law of creation, which is perceived by us, by the creature, as the ultimate giving force, the force of life. In the end, it's all in our perception, but what Kabbalah describes it as a force that just wants to fill everything. That's why they call it the force to bestow, or the will to bestow, or the will to give. And in order to realize itself, in order to fulfill its goal of bestowing or fulfilling, it creates a will to receive. This is called phase 1. In Hebrew it's called Bchina, from the word discernment, and it's called Bchina Aleph, the first discernment. Okay? I'll call it Bchina Aleph. Bchina Aleph. Okay, root is called Shoresh, which is in Hebrew root. Okay, and in this state the creature is filled with the upper light completely. It doesn't feel itself separated from the upper light. They are both as one. The metaphor Kabbalists use is like a candle compared to a torch, that it's nullifying or being part of it. And the light that is felt inside of it is called the light of Chokhmah. Chokhmah. Okay, and from it we develop later on to phase 2, Bchina Bet, in which the vessel wants to bestow. Why does it want to bestow? Because in the light itself, beside the pleasure, beside the fulfillment, there is also another component, which is the sensation of the giver. Okay, on the human level, it's very clear. You can say that also we see it on domestic animals, for example, that it's very important who you get the food from. So if I have fish in the aquarium, they don't really care who gives them the food. They don't have a sensation of the giver. But a dog might have it more, a human being even more, because if I get $1 million, it's nice, but if I get $1 million from the new fiancé of my ex-wife that is much smarter and successful than me and is pitying me for my wife leaving me for him, then the $1 million have a different kind of flavor. Yeah, sometimes I wouldn't even accept it because it comes from him. We also see it with the drawing. So if it's a drawing that was painted by by Picasso, then I'm willing to pay $2 million for it. But if it's the exact same drawing, but somebody else who is called Chris something that made it, then I'm not willing to pay more than $10 for that. Okay, so this all comes from this point that we have a sensation of the giver. But let's say here that in Bchina Aleph, in phase 1, the kli, the vessel, the creature feels that there is something higher that gives him the pleasure, and it wants to be like it. Okay, so another example which is not accurate, but just so we'll get along with it. So if I get $1 million from Bill Gates, after I enjoy the $1 million, I think if I would be Bill Gates, I would have the $1 million to give and much more. Okay, so this is what. So again, this is like a shallow example of of something like what happens here, in which Bchina Bet decides to bestow like the Creator. Okay, and this is called the light of Chasadim. In Hebrew it means not mercy, but like giving. Okay, and let's not go into the literal translation, because it's again take us to inaccurate places. And this is where we stopped last time. Okay, we wanted to expand more about the difference between phase 2 and phase 1. We're on page, if I remember correctly, we're on page 51 in the book. But before going into that, I want to finish the general overview according to what we saw in figure 1 in the book. So what will happen later on is that Bchina Bet will see that it's incapable of giving. It doesn't have the capability of generating this pleasure, this light, what we call the light, something to give, but all its essence is about receiving. That's why in Bchina Gimel, the vessel will decide that it wants to keep giving, but it needs to receive something for its livelihood, for its energy to exist. Okay, and later on in phase 4, Bchina Dalet, the vessel will understand that all its essence is about receiving both the pleasure and the possibility to be like the Creator itself, okay, like the giver. But again, we'll see that later on. And now we're here, and we'll take it from page 51 and move forward. Of course, if you have questions, you are more than welcome to ask them in the chat or in the whatever is convenient for you. You can also say hello if you want. Okay, so yeah, okay, some people started saying hello. So hello to everybody that joined. If you have questions, again, welcome. You're welcome to ask them. Okay, good. So now let's go back to page 51. Page 51. Okay, so let's examine. Is it okay? Okay, this is better now. Let's examine what distinguishes phase 2 from phase 1. If we examine figure 1, this is what we saw before, yeah? If you remember, figure 1 was about the general structure, okay? This was figure 1, okay? Very similar to what I drew, with the explanation what does an upper arrow means, a downward arrow, an upward arrow, okay? Okay, that was figure 1. Of course, it's better to go back to the previous lessons, and if you haven't seen them, and go over them, but that's for you to decide. So let's examine what distinguishes phase 2 from phase 1. We will see that the Kli itself, the Kli is the vessel, the will to receive, the creature, does not change throughout the phases. This means that the will to receive is unchanging. Okay, this is interesting because the will to receive that was created in a certain quantity and quality that is like a copy paste of the upper light. We call it like a chotem and nichtam. It's like a stamp and what was imprinted from it. Okay, so it's like the same, just opposite. Because the will to receive was designed in the thought of creation. It is eternal and can never be changed. That's why, although we have all the time the illusion, even in our world, when we develop, that only if I'll have this one thing, only if I'll have this specific pleasure, if I have this woman to marry, if I have this new job, if I'll move to another place, if this health problem will solve, then I'll never ever want anything else. I'll be completely happy and I won't ask for anything else. That's of course a complete illusion, and every time we attain something, we enjoy it for a very short period of time, and we move to the next goal or chasing another fulfillment, because the will to receive in its core is endless and it's eternal, and it needs to be fulfilled by the upper light, and until it doesn't do so, it will always keep evolving. What does change, however, is what the Kli wants to receive. Okay, so you can say that the Kli doesn't change, the light doesn't change, but the relationship between them, or the relation of the Kli, of the creature towards the Creator, changes. In phase 2, the will to receive wants to receive pleasure from giving, not from receiving. And this is a fundamental change. The fundamental difference is that phase 2 needs another being to whom it can give. Therefore, to be a giver, phase 2 has to relate positively to someone or something else beside itself. This is also a very limited explanation, because when we talk about bestowing in Kabbalah or giving, it's not me, a protein body gives to another protein body. This is still called receiving, because I do it in order to get something for myself by this action. Okay, so it's not like altruism. All the altruism that we talk about in this world is actually a very sophisticated form of egoism. But what we talk about when we talk about giving or bestowing, in a more advanced explanation, more in-depth explanation, we talk about change in perception of reality. So to the extent that a person can change the concept of self, or how it perceives itself, or the reality, going beyond the corporal body, then it's called to bestow or to give. But for now, let's keep with the simple explanation, with a more shallow explanation. So again, we are talking about what's the difference between phase 2 and phase 1, and you can see that here the vessel, the Kli just received, and here it decides to bestow. So another difference between 2 and 1 is that in 2 the Kli overcomes the natural tendency to receive, okay? So it has to do some kind of action on its own. Okay. In Kabbalah, a given